Hi everyone, Rolnar here. Welcome to my messy garage, and today I'm going to show you something that is quite possibly one of the most ugly things you have ever seen. Why are you still looking at me? I'm talking about this thing over here. This is my garage heater, believe it or not. This is a 10,000 watt electric heater. I made this, or rather my father and I made this, back when I was in high school, actually. We made it for his garage, but now I have it and I use it for mine. And while this thing may look terribly ugly, it is one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen when you're cold and you want some heat. So basically what it is 4 stove burners in this portion and a salvaged furnace blower over here. This is a 120 volt furnace blower. These are 240 volt elements, 4 large stove burner elements. The coil type that you find on typically older units, but I like those more than the newer ones personally. Absolutely hate my stove, for the record. This happens to be an old dryer tag, a 30 amp dryer tag, and I have no idea what is inside this duct tape anymore. I've forgotten, but I don't really care because it seems to work fine. And this is a 10 gauge cord, which is perfectly adequate, even though this heater is 10,000 watts. Now, if you go to the internet and look for a 10,000 watt electric heater, you'll find, certainly you'll find some results, but none of them will be very cost effective. I don't remember the total cost of this, but being that the furnace blower was free, and this metal work was just some old leftover stuff that was salvaged, and the stove burners I believe were $5 a piece. This whole thing cost about $20, and it works just awesome. If you don't believe me, my garage right now is about 35 degrees, and I'm going to plug this in. I have this 50 amp outlet up here, which has a 30 amp receptacle in it, but I have reasons for that. So if I plug this thing in, it powers on, and while it warms up, I'm going to mention a little bit about its construction in case somebody wants to build one of these out of spare parts. If you don't believe me, it really does work really well. There's the furnace blower, of course, and I have this cardboard flap just to control the amount of air. You can open up this side as well if you want to cool it off before you unplug it. There's a little gap over here to let some of the air out. That lets it cool off when you unplug it so that the air can circulate up. On this side, there's just, we just cut some slots in it and louvered it so that it blows the air up toward you when it comes out. And basically the construction of the elements is just some 10 gauge wire that was wrapped around the heating elements to connect them up to 240 volts. There are 4 stove elements in here, and the two front ones make an A, like this, with the electrical connections connected together, and the back 2 make the same sort of thing. So the wires are just wrapped around the back 2, and then they extend and wrap around the front 2. Very simple, and it works quite well. And you can adjust the temperature by how much airflow you get. But the garage is pretty cold right now, and I'm shivering, so I probably sound a little bit unusual, but in any case, the air coming out of this is very warm, very pleasant, and it is a 10 kilowatt heater, which is awesome. So my garage here is not very large. It's about 24 feet by 22 feet with a 9-foot ceiling, I believe. So it has a pretty good volume. I do heat the garage. I have it set to about 35 degrees Fahrenheit, just above freezing, so my cars melt off. If you don't live in the north, then you probably don't quite understand how things work that way, but it is nice to have your car thawed out when you get into it. But I really only use this particular heater when I want to give a quick shot of heat to my garage to do some sort of work. And it does work pretty well. This thermometer over here started at about 35 degrees. It's already warmed up to about 40. And if I let this thing run for an hour or so, it'll be probably 50 degrees in here, even if the garage started out at maybe 15 degrees. So it does work pretty well. And if we look inside, we'll probably see some of the elements glowing red hot by now. Go back in there glowing. The airflow isn't perfect. Some of them get more air than others. Some get warmer than others, but there is nice and warm. Let's see how warm that air is. I have here an infrared thermometer, which I can see that the concrete temperature is about 34 degrees, which is pretty reasonable. It's about what it is this time of year, even in a heated garage. But I can see what the temperature is by putting a substance in front of it that is light, like paper. I can't do this with one hand very well, so I'm holding the camera with the other one, but if I put paper in front of it, I can measure the temperature. So I'm going to do that off camera and let you know what the outgoing temperature of this air is. And it appears that the outgoing temperature of the air, as it's configured right now, is about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So a little over 100 degrees Celsius, which is a very comfortable temperature for a blower like this. And it moves a pretty good amount of air, so it circulates air in the garage well, warms it up pretty quickly, and it's quite pleasant to be around. So I just wanted to share this because there's a lot of different options for heat. You don't necessarily have to purchase something. You can piece something together out of spare parts, and this is a good example of that. It is a salvaged furnace blower, some salvaged cardboard boxes, this piece of electrical wire that was salvaged from something, I don't remember what. This happens to be an old dryer cord that was salvaged. The box here was made out of salvaged, I think, computer cases that were just wired up together for stove burners that were purchased, but you could also salvage those. It was not very expensive to buy them. And a piece of sheet metal that was used for HVAC work. So while this is running, let's run to the basement and see how much electricity it's actually using. Here we are in my basement. This is my breaker panel, and I leave the cover off because I'm always doing something in here, so I just never bother putting it back on. But this breaker here is 50 amps, and that is the one going through 6-gauge wire out to the heater in the garage. Everything is up to code except the outlet itself, and probably that heater doesn't meet code, but since it plugs in, nobody really cares. So I'll set my meter here. It's just a clamp meter, so I can clamp around the wires. I'll set that to, let's see, AC amps, and put it around one of the two conductors. And I have about 240 volts at this house, and you can see that this one is drawing 44 amps, and the other phase is drawing, let's see if I can get it in the light. I cannot, but I can read it here even if you can't. It says 39 amps. So basically, one of them takes 40 amps, one of them takes 45. And that's about what I would expect, because 40 amps is about 10 kilowatts, and the extra 5 amps at 120 volts on the one phase is to run the fan itself. So this is indeed a 10,000 watt electric heater, which gives you about 35,000 BTUs per hour. Here we are back in the garage, and it's now about 45 degrees in the garage. It's warming up pretty quickly. Probably a lot quicker than my thermometer says, because I'm nice and warm already, even though it's winter time, about 0 degrees outside, 35-mile-an-hour winds, and altogether unpleasant, but I am very pleasant here in my garage, thanks to this heater that was pieced together with spare parts. Now, you can certainly just purchase garage heaters, but sometimes it's more satisfying to make your own inventions, and this is just one of those cases. This is a project that my dad and I worked on probably about 15 years ago, and it has served pretty well. It's still very useful, puts out a lot of heat, and if I wanted to purchase something like this that worked as well from a standard supplier, I wouldn't be able to find one. This is pretty much ideal in my opinion. It works really well, it's just really ugly. And in case you're wondering, none of these wires are hot. They're all nice and cool, no issues there. The plug, nice and cool. So these wires are perfectly adequate, but I just wanted to share this, just to give somebody some ideas, just something of interest. And yeah, there's a lot of different ways to accomplish a goal. In this case, the goal is to heat my garage, and this works very well. Now, I did mention that I do heat my garage. I have this thermostat that I installed. I have it set to about 35 degrees, just above freezing, just so I can keep things thawed out in here. I live in a place where it gets very cold, so 35 degrees is nice and warm, during the winter at least. And I just have it running through this cord that I salvaged from, I think, a hairdryer or something, I don't know. But it runs up to this thermostat, and then I just have standard household wiring running down to a, you probably can't see it, but on the wall back here, just a 800 watt wall baseboard heater that I got from my parents. That was actually in the bathroom of the house that I grew up in. They threw it up in the attic when they removed it, and, well, 10 years later or so, I grabbed it, and now it's in my garage doing work once again. And it works pretty well. As I mentioned, this garage is about 22 by 24 feet, I believe, with a 9-foot ceiling. The walls on this side and on this side are R13 insulation, plus whatever the drywall and siding is. And the roof is only insulated to R19. In this climate, R38 is standard for a house, but the garage is just R19 in this case. And this 800 watt heater over here, I'm going to shut this thing off just because it's kind of noisy. It's really not that noisy as far as 10,000 watt heaters go, but for this video I'm going to unplug it. Alright, that's much better. So even though this is just an 800 watt heater over here, it does keep my garage above freezing, even in the very coldest weather. Of course, if I open the garage door, all the cold air rushes in and it very quickly gets cold, but assuming I only open it a couple times a day, it can keep up, and it keeps the garage relatively warm. Now, my house isn't particularly big, but this simple garage heater increases my utility bills by about 50%. So it costs me a lot to heat my garage, but you know what? It is pretty nice, and I decided that it's worth it. In any case, I just wanted to show you my ugly garage heater, and I thought that some people might find this interesting. So, thanks for watching.